Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into something massive today, the shifting, high-stakes landscape of startup funding. Seriously, if you care about innovation, you'll definitely want to pay attention to this. Based on deep dive strategy sessions from a venture studio, we are looking at a fundamental clash of philosophies and how new companies are built and funded. I mean, the stakes literally couldn't be higher right now. With the market downturns we've seen, widespread tech layoffs, and a growing epidemic of founder exhaustion, the way we build companies is being forced to evolve. So let's kick this off with a pretty tough question. Is the traditional venture capital model actually broken? Well, our sources suggest the current ecosystem is under massive, massive strain. We really have to step back and question the sustainability of a system where an overwhelming majority of startups are essentially expected to burn out and fail, all just to fund one giant outlier. Think about the sheer volume of capital being burned in pursuit of hypergrowth. Our sources point out the billions of dollars are often just torched in a matter of months, purely to artificially inflate user metrics. And what happens? It leaves hollow companies in their wake. Actually, our sources highlight the stark reality of this traditional funding approach with a pretty intense quote. It says, "They don't really care if the horse is killed as long as there is one winning." Wow. It's a brutal analogy, right? But it hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures how some traditional funding models treat founders like disposable lottery tickets. The focus is purely on securing that one massive win, totally disregarding the immense collateral damage to the entrepreneurs, the employees, and honestly, the whole ecosystem left behind. Okay, moving on to Section 1, the startup funding dilemma. Let's break down the foundational dysfunctions that are really plaguing the startup ecosystem right now. The crucial point here is that the old math, it's simply failing. The venture capital power law, the idea that one massive 100x success covers the total losses of dozens of failures, well, that's breaking down because valuations became so hyperinflated. When every single company is priced for absolute perfection, the math just stops working. And because of this intense pressure to become that one shining outlier, founders are often given just enough capital to survive to the next funding round, but definitely not enough to build a stable foundation. It's like starvation mode. It forces them into these short-term fixes that completely warp their thinking. The obsession shifts away from building a great product to achieving this rapid, unnatural scale. They get stuck on a relentless treadmill where sustainable business practices are totally sacrificed for short-term vanity metrics. Frankly, it's a perfect recipe for deep psychological and operational exhaustion. Which brings us to Section 2, the Liquidator VC model. To understand how we actually got to this point, we need to look at the first of two contrasting venture capital models outlined in our source documents. Our sources define this as the Liquidator VC. This is a model absolutely obsessed with quick multiples. It's all about buying in, extracting value, and selling off parts as fast as humanly possible. The sources actually associate this with the historical Sean Parker era of tech. So for context, think back to that hyper-aggressive early social media boom. The whole move fast and break things mentality, where explosive user acquisition trumped literally everything else. But that style, it's increasingly unstable in today's complex market. The Liquidator model isn't about building market infrastructure with founders. It is purely about extracting value from them. Ultimately, this Liquidator mindset treats the startup world exactly like a casino. It relies heavily on guesswork, trying to place bets early, and then aggressively riding whatever speculative hype cycle happens to be trending at the moment, whether that's crypto, AI, the metaverse, whatever it takes for a fast exit. It completely abandons fundamental first principles value creation. So instead of creating lasting companies, catching a speculative wave usually just leaves a wake of destroyed companies, wasted capital, and burned out talent when the tide inevitably rolls back out. And that brings us to the fundamental clash we're exploring today. On one side, we have the old paradigm, the Liquidator VC, which relies on those quick multiples, short-term extraction, and treating founders like disposable lottery tickets. But on the other side, we have the Legitimacy VC. This is the alternative our sources propose, and it's completely distinct. It's all about long-term value creation, building sustainable market infrastructure, and treating founders as genuine partners. We are talking about a massive shift here, from an extractive, casino-like model to a deliberate, value-building paradigm. So, let's dive deeper into Section 3, the Legitimacy VC model. Let's explore this alternative system that focuses heavily on fundamental value and stewardship. Legitimacy VC is defined not as a casino, but as a venture architecture lab. Now, what does acting as an architecture lab actually mean in practice? Well, it means these VCs don't just cut a check and passively wait around for a quarterly update. No way. It involves highly hands-on operational support, incredibly deep technical vetting of the product, and strategic building right from day one. It's built on long-term trust and first principles, creating an environment where complex, difficult technology can actually take root and thrive sustainably, instead of just being rushed to market half-baked.
A massive key differentiator for Legitimacy VC is the time frame, 10 years. Our sources frequently use this brilliant analogy of a vineyard to describe the approach. Just think about the difference between strip mining a piece of land for a quick payoff versus planting a vineyard. In a vineyard, you're planting seeds, you weather the harsh seasons, you meticulously prune, and you cultivate a yield that actually grows better over time. Unlike the quick flip of the Liquidator model, Legitimacy VCs commit to a 10-year time horizon. They're nurturing real compounding growth over a full decade. All right, on to Section 4, Tools for Legal Engineering.
So how do we actually build this vineyard in the real world? Well, we're going to need a new toolkit. Our sources outline some highly sophisticated Web3 and legal engineering tools to make this Legitimacy VC model a reality. Let's break these down because this is super fascinating. First up, we have smart contracts. These are used to reduce what the sources term latency as legal damage. In plain English, this is the immense harm caused when a fast-moving startup's reality changes, but their static paper contracts take months and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to amend. Smart contracts allow agreements to be dynamic. They update at the speed of software. Second is algorithmic consensus. Look, in a traditional boardroom, a simple majority vote can easily be hijacked by the loudest or wealthiest voice, which often alienates the founders. But algorithmic consensus requires stakeholders to actually invest ongoing time, energy, and tokens to reach alignment. It creates a much deeper, mathematically proven agreement. And third, we have tools like the Serious Oath utilizing decentralized arbitration platforms like Clearos. In traditional VC, if a founder makes an honest mistake, the reaction is often super punitive, like oust the founder, replace the CEO. Clearos introduces this idea of redemptive accountability. It uses an independent, game theory-driven jury to resolve disputes impartially. The focus is on finding a path forward, learning, and preserving the team, rather than just instantly destroying relationships. And all of this illustrates how we are essentially modernizing the law itself. The goal is to completely move past simply scanning old paper documents and calling them digital. The sources propose utilizing something called the Document Object Model, or DOM, for legal interfaces. Now, if you aren't a developer, think of it this way. When you visit a modern website and click a button, the entire web page doesn't need to reload just to update a tiny piece of text, right? That's the web DOM at work. Applied to law, a legal DOM means a complex partnership agreement doesn't need to be entirely renegotiated and rewritten by expensive lawyers just to change a single operational parameter. By using AI agents and modular text, they're turning rigid contracts into living, responsive operating systems that effortlessly adapt to a startup's journey over that entire 10-year vineyard timeframe. Let's bring it back to the human element in Section 5, the future of founders. So what does this massive paradigm shift actually mean for the entrepreneurs out there building the future? Basically, it means a return to reality. Valuations will be based on first principles and actual tangible assets, like real intellectual property and patents, not just hype. But more importantly, the ultimate goal of Legitimacy VC is to ensure creator sovereignty. They want to create a system where the economic rights and the moral rights of a project are distinctly respected. For example, imagine a founder who wants to open source a core piece of software they built. A Liquidator VC might try to block that to maximize short-term profit, but a Legitimacy VC focused on the 10-year infrastructure empowers the founder to retain that moral creative control while still protecting the venture's long-term economic upside. The founder firmly stays in the driver's seat. So as this entire landscape of startup funding fundamentally shifts, we are left with a pretty critical choice. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought based on our explainer today. Which ecosystem will you choose to invest your time, your energy, and your capital in? Will it be the fast, disposable, purely speculative casino of the Liquidator VC? Or will it be the long-term, compounding, structurally sound vineyard of the Legitimacy VC? Think about it, because the future of how we innovate depends entirely on our answer.